Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So guys, I hope this is coming through okay. I am in the Starbucks parking lot. I wanted to talk about something that came up today that I thought was an interesting topic. Chris Coons, Democrat, man with the most racist name in Congress. Chris Coons, that's awesome. The man with the most racist name in Congress brought up, and this is nothing about him, by the way. I'm just saying the name is awesome. The name is fucking hilarious. He makes this point that the left has a religious issue. And as he goes through the article, I agree with him and I disagree with him. Leaning more towards the side from the left, more so agreeing with him. But let me explain. He's showing stats. And I agree with the stats for the most part. Like 80% of the public are religious in some way. Two-thirds of the population prays every morning. I find that number to be amazing, ridiculous. Um, But look, I'm further to the left than most, and I find this stuff to be arbitrary and cultural. So yes, I find it to be somewhat ridiculous that two-thirds of the population prays every morning. Now, if you're saying that these people are meditating because they want something specific to take place, fair enough. If you're praying and creating, memory boards and all this other stuff with no action behind it, then yes, I'm sorry, your prayers are going to be for naught. That's my own perspective of it. I don't know what reality is, so I'm somewhat ambiguous on this whole thing of God and everything else. That's kind of besides the point, and to some degree, it's kind of getting into the point that he's making. The left is somewhat antagonistic towards religion, just the way it is. For the most part, we look at this idea of science, we look at this idea of research and evidence and everything else, and of course, religion has none, zero. The entire principle is based on this idea of faith. Take it by faith. I don't think it's crazy to look out at the world and not necessarily understand how the world is arranged and put together, and you create this idea of a God. Fair enough. I don't think it's crazy to look out and wonder, what is this? What is our reality? How is this reality structured, etc., etc.? Perfectly fine. I don't think it's even crazy, and maybe this is somewhat self-serving, to get into this idea of consciousness research where you can actually see it for yourself. You can, study it, put your hands on it. You can get into this other reality frame, this other reality context where you're observing your reality from a different perspective. Again, fair enough. But if we're talking about Christians, they create a mythology. There's God, there's angels. God has this particular plan. God comes back and casts the world in the water or casts the world in the flames, and he's a jealous and vengeful God. He's angry. He's an angry God. But ultimately, the qualities that he exudes are the worst qualities that you would ever, deal with in any person that you're ever interacting with. No person on earth will want the qualities that they ascribe to God. This kind of jealous and vengeful, angry person. He's like a, you know, like a mean girl, like in the movies. Here's the point: the antagonism between religion and the left purely boils down to this idea of God and what they make up within this idea of God. They have this whole mythology surrounding the thing. But take the mythology out for the moment. Exclude it. I'm going to cover the sick. I'm going to make sure we deal with the poor. The chance of a rich man getting through heaven is the same as like a horse going through needle of a pin. And I know I got that wrong, but you understand my point. The values that these guys exude from a religious standpoint, if you're actually exuding the values of, this kind of Jesus Christ philosophy, this kind of Martin Luther King philosophy, that is progressivism. It just is progressivism. It is the left. You would think that there would be a natural ally between the left and the religious. Now, again, get rid of this stupid shit about abortion. Get rid of this stupid shit about um, gays and all this other stuff. Those things are problematic and those things are sticking points. But if you're getting to the bare bone crux of what takes place with regards to what these religions preach and what these religions believe in, or at least what they say they espouse, there's not much of a difference. You can almost make the argument that progressivism dovetails beautifully into religious thought, with the exception of the making shit up. That's where you lose people. Like, that's where progressives say, all right, this is where I take this is where I leave you. But when you're saying, should we cover the poor? The answer is yes. You should have religious people right there beside you agreeing with that. Should we make sure the sick is intact? The answer will be yes. Again, right there beside you. Should we ensure that people are intact? Should we be fair? Should we be honest? Should we function with a level of integrity? All of those things are yeses. All of those things are yeses. We hit our heads. You're on this thing of on the mythology of it. Yeah, we hit our heads on the mythology of it. Look, I was growing up, and even as a kid, I was immensely antagonistic towards religion. I hated it. I hated it. I thought it was a cancer on our society. As I got older, and I became more nuanced, I looked at it as I can overlook certain aspects of it because of certain people. Martin Luther King being one of those people. Now, Martin Luther King was a Baptist preacher. And it's hard to listen to his sermons and not come away from those sermons thinking to yourself, this guy's a progressive. He may believe some out there shit about religion, this whole God, Jesus, and everything else. But when he's having this conversation about wealth, and he's having this conversation about inequality and all this stuff, he's coming from this from a very particular perspective. Let me say it this way. I agree that religion has done more harm than good. Fair enough. That's my perspective of it all. I also understand, though, that when people are in hardships, the cold, hard reality of things, people don't function well in that situation. People tend to go for things that are trying to give them this kind of outlet, this thing of faith. Now, faith from the standpoint of there's nothing that we can do tangibly on this planet to change the scenario. That's usually wrong. You usually can do things to change the scenario. But there's this aspect of faith that goes in line of nudging that along, getting those people up in the morning to do something when they feel that there's nothing that can be done in the situation. Now, can that be done from a secular perspective? Maybe. In the history of our world and our country, is that the case? No. At least not from my understanding of it. If you're looking at Muslim cultures and the way they're fighting back, they're using religion in the same conduit as Martin Luther King used religion. They're just using the conduit in a more, I guess, aggressive tone. King used it in a completely different way. This is not a defensive religion, so don't misunderstand me on that. This is more so a defense that these things are reconcilable. This is not a scenario where progressives are completely so antagonistic towards the religious aspects of our society that we can't necessarily get along with. And I'm making the case that there is a natural alliance between Christians, actual, real Christians who believe in that stuff, and progressives. Providing progressives can ignore there's a God and there's angels and, God floats above it all and he passes judgment, all this other stuff. What if you had a software program? Say you built a software program and that software program was self-aware. Would that software program in any way understand what it means to be in a physical matter reality? The only reality the software program would know is the reality that you program into that software program. Any guess that software is making, for the most part, is going to be untethered to anything in reality. How can it guess something when it has no clue what non-physicality is in the scenario? Christians are making this argument that they themselves, from a human context, can come up with all of this stuff that's taking place, and I find that to be absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Not just Christians, all these religions. Anybody who's kind of making this case that there's life after death, okay, I'm on that bandwagon with you. You can make evidence for it. You can find evidence for it. The evidence is there. But if you're going with this level of trying to decide what that is, what that looks like, and the hierarchy and all this other stuff, you've jumped off a cliff. Does those people jumping off a cliff, though, preclude us from interacting with those people? No, it doesn't. No, it does not. Does that mean that I can stand hand in hand with somebody who's this kind of Cornel West? Cornel West is, he believes in his religious dogma, and yet at the same token, that man is a staunch progressive like nobody's business. He would make the argument that that religious belief informs that progressivism. I don't need the religious belief to inform my progressivism. I look at this stuff as just being, this is the way people need to reorganize themselves in a way that's fair and honest. Otherwise, you can't get a society that's fair and honest. So, all right, let's take a few questions before I head out. Dave, what did you say? Just one question of importance. What does the scriptures of these wacko fucks commandos have to do who refuse or revile the dogma? That's all that counts. Is it death to blasphemers? I don't fully understand the question. What do you, just one question of importance. What does the scripture have? Scripture of these wacko fucks command happens to those who refuse to revile dogma. That's all that counts. It's death to blasphemers. Are you talking about Muslims, Christians? Or are you just talking about religion in general? No, Dave, in this case, I actually agree with you on this. There are certain lines where you say no. There are certain lines where you say no. Like, there are going to be certain things where they're bashing gays, and yes, I'm going to be against them bashing gays. There's no solidarity on anything bashing gays. There's no solidarity on this thing of preventing women from having abortions. But that's not the spectrum of political thought. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm stuck with this thing of seeing people like Martin Luther King and James Baldwin and, well, I don't know if James Baldwin was a Christian, but Martin Luther King, Cornel West, these guys are warriors. Even you can make the case Malcolm X was informed by his religious belief. Yes, he was progressive. Yes, he was aggressive. He was just an aggressive progressive. Just because these guys pray doesn't mean they're all bad. They may believe some loony shit. But if you've noticed on my channel, I get into some wild shit too. I would argue that the shit that I get into is based on experience, at least on some degree. Look, all I'm saying is, Chris Coons, the man with the most racist name in politics, I love his name. I gotta be honest, I have this kind of weird fascination with his name. He makes a good point. I think he makes actually a good point. We can't be antagonistic towards religion just because they're religious. Be antagonistic towards them for specific issues, yes. If you're bashing gays, yes, I'm against you. I'm against you. If you're preventing women from getting their abortions, yes, I'm against you. I don't think you should overturn women's rights in that way. It's not your say-so what they do with their bodies. But if they're Christians, honestly, if they're honestly Christians or some other religion, but if they're earnest in their religious beliefs, they're your allies. They're your natural allies. I said before, there's no such thing as a Christian conservative. Yeah, there's no such thing as a Christian conservative. If there is no such thing as a Christian conservative, then what are those people? Those people are naturally, to some degree, leftists. Do you honestly believe Jesus was a conservative? Is that what we are? The hippie that went running around the country talking about the poor and the homeless and the helpless, saying the rich wouldn't be able to get into heaven and they're going to go straight to hell? The guy who turned over the counters and the thing for the banking thing? Are you telling me that this guy, this hippie, this nappy-haired hippie, was a conservative? He wasn't. He was a progressive. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. My phone is about to die. No, right there. Yeah, the forcing on everybody else is a fail. Absolute fail. That's absolute fail. And yes, you would find me bash people who are in this kind of religious thing. And even in this video, I accidentally kind of stepped into the thing. I'm trying to be conciliatory, and even that, I step into this thing of this kind of loony thought. I guess what I'm saying is, the looniness of the thought to me doesn't preclude interacting with them on issues that they themselves should have this kind of affinity for. They're not going to agree with you on abortion. But 80% of the other issues they will agree with you if they're being honest to what they're supposed to believe in. So, I'll leave it at that. There's another one I want to talk about, the Trump thing, but I got to get back to work. I'll do it this evening. Thanks, Jenny. Pat Hacker, I realize people need religion, but why force it on everybody else? Because it's human beings. This is a human being thing. This is not a religious thing, honestly. This is just, think of a narrative comes out. I need you to believe my narrative. If you don't believe my narrative, you're a conspiracy theorist. Whoa, wait a minute. I'm a conspiracy theorist because I don't believe your narrative? Yes. You must toe my line. Any dissent is a challenge to what I believe in, and I can't have my beliefs be destroyed. What do I think about religion? So, you've heard me do topics on UFOs. You've heard me do topics on aliens. You've heard me do topics on OBEs, out-of-body experiences, consciousness studies, all this stuff. I find this stuff immensely fascinating. All of these topics are things, for the most part, you yourself, either through meditative techniques, out-of-body techniques, even if you're touching an aspect of your consciousness, you're touching some aspect of something. It's to some degree tangible. That's what I'm getting at. You can research that stuff. Like, there are people who do past life studies, so you can see these kids who have these memories of past lives and stuff like that. There's research in this. Like, there's stuff where I can put my hands on and say, okay, this is research that are going on to those areas. If you're telling me that there's God and he's in heaven and there's a Jesus and there's angels, and you're being very specific about something that I don't know how you're being specific about it. If you're telling me that, 70 trillion years ago, somebody created souls, again, I don't know how you're saying what took place in 70 trillion years ago and how you're saying it with a straight face. If you're saying that you're going to get X amount of versions when you die, again, I don't know how you're saying this stuff with a straight face. I don't know where you're getting this from. My take on religion is, from the standpoint of trying to get people to behave a particular way, I get it. I tend to believe that people conform the religion around to who they are. At least the people that I've come across in regards to religion. They tend to wrap themselves around the religion, but they tend to wrap the religion in their own lifestyle. It's not necessarily they change in order to meet the religion. It's kind of the other way around. They become somewhat dogmatic in their point of views with that religion. Other people become this kind of casual Christians. Yes, they pray in the morning and they go to church every so often, but they throw the shit away the moment they leave church. It's not something they necessarily live by. It depends on the degree that these people are. Arby, that's an interesting point. All right, so this is a philosophical point that you're making. I think if religion disappear, heaven will start here. You're saying that this idea of heaven in the aftermath somehow emboldens the problems in our society. You can make this argument that people's ability to get away in their society, like having this open space where, okay, I can take a weekend off and go to the country, in some way allows the society to remain how it is because it allows an escape valve for the things of the vagaries of their society. That could be true. If they believe that there was nothing else there, this is all you get. There's no heaven above, there's no hell below. Your life is this life. You better make it what you make it, because this is all you get. Do you get a fundamentally different world? I don't know. Life is eternal in heaven. Why do you need to procreate? Well, see, here's the thing. I'm a little more new agey on this point. From the OBE thing, the whole spirit guy thing, and all this other stuff, I do have this aspect of me that will be classified as being religious. Like, somebody will say, hey, dude, this idea of spirit guides is kind of, that's kind of a religious belief. I'd argue that I'm interacting with something. I'm talking to somebody. So if I'm talking to somebody and I'm interacting with something, what is this concept of real? So just that point for the moment. We don't know what reality is. So I can't be overly dismissive, I guess. It's just when it gets into this level of ridiculousness. Like, it's one thing of saying I'm ambiguous about what it is. I'm agnostic. That just seems to be honest. Saying I'm an atheist or I'm a Christian, that just seems to be adding stuff to it. There's no way to know. People say interaction with God is the basis of their belief. I think they're talking to themselves. Like when you hear these people talk, like I've run across these people, they're speaking in tongues and all this other stuff. There's nothing to show for it. It's God said do this. Wait, what do you mean God said do this? Well, their belief is blind. From a Christian standpoint, this idea of faith, the whole point of faith is you don't have evidence. You don't have evidence. You have to go by faith. You don't have evidence. I find that to be an amazing point of view, but that's what they go with. Energy is measurable in our bodies. Look, I told you before, if it weren't for some of my odd experiences, I probably would have been an atheist. Um, I'm not an atheist. Nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. I just don't have this comical belief of gods and angels and all this hierarchy and stuff. Like, do you believe that you have a brain, or do you believe that you have a brain? There's no way to know. Like for example, from a quantum mechanics standpoint, this stuff kind of pops into existence when somebody observes it. So, does my house exist if nobody is observing my house? Probably not. If I go to my street and I line up on my avenue, then yes, my house is going to be there. The same question becomes, do you have a brain if nobody is observing your brain? Is it very possible that consciousness creates the construct of a body and for the most part handles this experience, and that it provides all of the things that you expect to see just because you expect to see it? It's like a game space. If you're playing a video game, let's say you're playing World of Warcraft, your character is running about, your character gets hit, he gets hit in the knees, he's bleeding. There's no blood in that character. There's no blood pumping through your character's veins. If there was a doctor in the game space, that doctor would open up the character. He would see a heart, he would see a brain, he would see a lung, he would see a liver, he would see all that stuff. All those things are projections at that point. Once they're open, it's being observed. It needs to be represented. It needs to be rendered. If this is some kind of digital game space, then these things are probably rendered at the point where these things are observed, which is kind of why quantum mechanics is the way quantum mechanics is. That's probably the explanation of why light behaves as a particle and a wave, this kind of particle-wave duality. When you're not looking at it, it's one thing. When you're looking at it, it's something else. But again, I'm stuck with this thing of ambiguity. The only honest answer for me is I don't know. But I find that just to be a flat, honest answer. Alright, this is powering off. Alright guys, I'm going to head out and get back to work.